Welcome to This Explainer. I want to jump right in today and talk about this strangely magical ability we all have. Seriously, think about it. Have you ever been physically stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, but mentally, you're miles away? You're completely immersed in this argument you had 3 days ago, coming up with a perfect comeback. Or maybe you're just sitting there eating dinner, but your brain is actually fast-forwarding to a really stressful deadline next month. While we all do it, every single day, often without even realizing it's happening. And mastering this ability, kind of learning how to intentionally harness it instead of just letting it drag us around, is literally the absolute key to balancing how we process our lives. So let's just dive right into it.
So, did you know we can actually time travel? Okay, not literally, no sci-fi movie stuff here, but while our bodies are sitting completely still in a chair, our minds are constantly zipping through time. We time travel when we replay that awkward conversation in the shower, right? Agonizing over what we should have said. And we mentally leap forward when we're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., nervously rehearsing for tomorrow's big meeting or freaking out over our 5-year plan. We plan, we regret, we rehearse, we worry. But here's the fascinating part. This ability isn't a glitch. It's not a flaw. Mental time travel is exactly how we build a life that actually makes sense. It lets us learn. It lets us prepare. The whole thing only becomes a problem when we ask the past or the future to do something they literally cannot do. And that is what throws our present completely out of whack.
Okay, let's break this down, starting with Act 1, the past, our internal teacher. We hear this cliché all the time, don't we? Stop living in the past. But according to our source material, that is actually really flawed advice. Why? Because sometimes the past holds something we desperately need to figure out. Psychologists actually have a term for this specific kind of mental time travel, where we look backward to solve a puzzle. It's called counterfactual thinking. Basically, it just means imagining how a situation might have gone differently. Say you missed a massive deadline at work because you didn't ask for help. Or maybe a relationship blew up over a really bad miscommunication. And you're left wondering, man, if I had just noticed that warning sign or spoken up sooner, would things be different? And yeah, sitting with that kind of thinking, it hurts. It can be profoundly painful. But pain doesn't mean it's useless. Research shows that imagining these different outcomes is actually incredibly effective. It's literally how the human brain translates the sting of regret into a concrete adjustment for the future, making sure we don't make the exact same mistake the next time a similar situation rolls around.
Which leads us directly into a really crucial point. The past doesn't just hand us lessons, it carries responsibility. If you hurt someone yesterday, or took out a loan, or made a sincere promise to a friend, just moving the clock forward to today doesn't magically erase that obligation. Yesterday being over doesn't cancel out the harm it caused. And this is exactly why telling someone to just let it go is often terrible, incomplete advice. Sure, some things definitely need to be let go, but others, they require active, present-day engagement. Taking responsibility for your past might mean biting the bullet and picking up the phone today to offer a really difficult apology, or setting up a payment plan to fix your credit. We have to balance pulling lessons from the past with actually taking action on them in the present, because as we all know, the ripples of yesterday definitely still matter today.
But all right, here's where we have to draw a hard, protective line. There's a massive difference between helpful reflection and just getting stuck in a repetitive loop. Helpful reflection, that might mean taking a long time to process something super complex. Think about grief, which definitely does not care about your schedule, or navigating a massive shift in your identity. That is totally healthy. But repetitive looping, that's when your mind is just spinning its wheels, circling the exact same material without ever inching closer to a solution. It's like ruminating on how angry you are while doing absolutely nothing to actually resolve the conflict, or agonizing endlessly over an event you have literally zero power to change. You're basically asking the past the exact same question for the 100th time and expecting it to somehow spit out a different answer. We really have to catch ourselves and recognize when reflection turns toxic. So yes, the past still matters as our teacher, but our ability to alter what actually happened is permanently gone.
That brings us to Act 2, the future. Think of this as our guide.
If the past is our teacher, then the future is our guide. And just like looking backwards, thinking ahead is a massive part of taking responsibility. It's not the enemy of being present at all. Actually, I absolutely love this wry little quote, "Man plans, God laughs." It just perfectly captures this tension we navigate every single day. Because look, we have to plan. Thinking ahead is just a core part of being a functional adult. We save money because we know, hey, retirement or a sudden broken down car will demand cash that we don't necessarily need today. We spend hours agonizing over our resumes so we're ready for job interviews. Big organizations build these incredibly intricate 5-year strategies. But while we do all of this responsible prep work, we have to face the punchline. Human control over the future has strict, absolute limits.
So here is the crucial paradigm shift you really need to take away. Planning is not prediction. A possible future is still, at the end of the day, only a possible future. Now, as humans, we naturally crave certainty. We are wired for it. We want guarantees. We want to know for sure that a new job is absolutely going to be better, or that a romantic relationship will last forever before we fully commit to it. But the future becomes a seriously dangerous place for our minds to hang out when we stop asking it for direction and start demanding absolute certainty. Because planning eventually hits a brick wall. There is always going to be some unexpected variable, a sudden market shift, or another person's decision that you simply could never predict. And ironically, the moment we let go of that demand for 100% certainty, it actually frees us up to make way more resilient, adaptable plans.
Which really just means that uncertainty isn't always a problem that more thinking can solve. Sometimes uncertainty is just the permanent condition we have to make decisions under. Think about launching a startup or deciding to just pack up your life and move to a brand new city. You are never, ever going to have all the facts before you take that leap. The goal of preparation isn't to make uncertainty magically disappear, because spoiler alert, it won't. The real goal is just to be ready enough. And being ready enough means you've gathered your resources, you've realistically assessed the risks, and you are prepared to act responsibly and adapt as things unfold, completely despite that lingering uncertainty.
All right, moving into the climax here, the illusion of control.
This brings us to the real ideological turning point of this explainer. It's the exact space where the past and the future collide. The illusion of control. We talk about life all the time as if everything falls neatly into two little buckets, right? Things we completely control and things we don't. But our source material highlights that this is way too simple of a binary. We really need to look at the vital distinction between control and responsibility. Having limited control does not mean you have zero responsibility. Let's look at a classic workplace example. Say you find yourself working under a truly toxic manager. You have absolutely zero control over that manager's behavior, their wild moods, or their totally unfair demands. But the exact moment you recognize that lack of control is the exact moment you step into your actual agency. Because you still retain the full responsibility to choose your response. You can choose to document the issues, you can set really firm boundaries, or you can pour your energy into hunting for a new job.
And please take this next point to heart because it is just incredibly liberating. Responsibility is not the same thing as blame. Okay, imagine someone is walking by your desk and they accidentally knock a massive cup of coffee all over your keyboard. What a mess, right? But the mess isn't your fault. You didn't cause it. You are absolutely not to blame. However, it is still your responsibility to decide how to respond so you can actually get back to work. Whether that means wiping it up yourself or asking the person who spilled it to help you clean. You can be entirely responsible for figuring out your next move without being at fault for creating the disaster in the first place. We literally do not need total control over our circumstances before we can take meaningful action.
Which brings us to Act 3, the present, our arena of action.
So where do we actually do all that responding? Right here, right now. Whatever we learn from our past teacher and whatever we are preparing for with our future guide, it all eventually has to shape what we do today. The present is this unique, active arena where information finally transforms into a response. You can't apologize yesterday, but you can absolutely apologize for yesterday, right now. You can't actually act in tomorrow, but you can definitely prepare for it today. And honestly, this completely reframes the whole concept of mindfulness for me. It's not about achieving some mystical, floating state of calm or emptying your brain entirely. It's highly practical. It just means actively noticing where your attention has drifted off to. If you catch yourself looping on a past regret, you just gently say, okay, not right now, and you pull your focus back to the present. Why? So you can make the absolute best choice with the resources that are actually sitting right in front of you today.
But okay, let's ground this firmly in reality for a second, because that popular hustle culture narrative, just focus on what you can control, it often completely ignores systemic limits, and honestly, it can sound painfully out of touch. Just look at this list of structural realities: money, health, family duties, past decisions, other people, workplace rules, discrimination, access to resources. We have to validate how incredibly heavy these things can be. Let's be real, people do not wake up every single day with equal choices. Sometimes your range of options is wide open, and other times it is painfully unfairly narrow. Validating your present agency does not mean you have unlimited superhero power to conquer the world. Our choices are very real, yes, but they are absolutely bound and limited by these stark structural circumstances.
And unfortunately, because of those structural limits, a really good decision does not always guarantee a good result.
A careful, brilliant leader can still get blindsided by an unpreventable market crash. A perfectly qualified applicant can spend hours on a flawless resume and still get a rejection email. You can literally do everything right and still just encounter terrible luck. But here is the critical takeaway. We cannot let a lack of total control trick us into fatalism. We cannot let it convince us that our actions just don't matter at all. Assuming you have zero control just because you had a run at bad luck, that's incredibly dangerous. It causes us to forfeit the one thing we actually do have, which is our present agency. Pretending we have no power is just as costly as pretending we have complete control over the universe.
So how do we actually balance all of this day to day? Well, we have to give the past, the future, and the present their own specific boundaries so they stop constantly competing for our attention. Let's imagine you're navigating a major career change. First, you visit the past, your teacher, to glean some lessons. You reflect on what you hated about your old job to give you context for your next move, but you don't pitch a tent and live there. Next, you look to the future, your guide for direction and preparation. You update your skills, you research the job market, but you don't demand a 100% absolute guarantee of success. And finally, you step into the present, which is your arena. This is where those past lessons actually become choices. This is where regret turns into repair, where all that preparation turns into tangible action, and where you actually hit send on that job application.
I want to leave you with this final lingering question to ask yourself the next time you feel stuck time traveling, kind of caught somewhere between past regret and future panic. Given what is true right now, what part of this situation is actually yours to respond to? Really take a moment with that. The answer might be massive, it might require a huge life change, or it might be surprisingly small. On a really tough day, responding might simply mean deciding what you absolutely refuse to surrender, like choosing to maintain your integrity in an unfair system, or just choosing to treat yourself with a little bit of grace. But whatever that response is, it happens now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you balance your lessons, your planning, and your actions just a little bit better.